In this video, we will explore the top 5 longest prison sentences in U.S. history. Join us as we delve into the horrific crimes and the individuals who received unimaginable punishments, forever imprisoned in darkness. 1. James Eagan Holmes. Leading off our list of unimaginable sentences, we turn to James Eagan Holmes, the Aurora movie theater shooter. He caused the horrific massacre at the Aurora, Colorado movie theater. Born in 1987 in San Diego, California, Holmes was once a promising neuroscience student at the University of Colorado. With a normal, somewhat shy and introverted demeanor, no one could have guessed that hidden deep within this man was a depraved mind with a sinister plan that had been brewing for months. From early 2012, he began accumulating weapons, including an AR-15 semi-automatic rifle, a Remington 870 shotgun, and 2 Glock handguns. He also bought over 6,000 rounds of ammunition, equipped himself with body armor, a gas mask, and meticulously prepared explosive devices at his apartment. Holmes's motive for the crime remains a mystery, although he was diagnosed with a psychotic disorder. It appears he wanted to create a personal catastrophe to balance his failures in life, a sick thought stemming from delusion. That fateful night was the 20th of July, 2012. Holmes drove to the Century 16 movie theater in Aurora, Colorado. He bought a ticket for the midnight showing of the blockbuster film The Dark Knight Rises and chose a front row seat near an emergency exit. At approximately 12:30 a.m., about 20 minutes into the film, Holmes quietly exited the theater through the emergency door he had propped open. He went to his car in the parking lot, changed from his regular clothes into a black tactical suit, put on a gas mask and helmet. Fully armed, Holmes then re-entered the theater through the exit he had left open. At this point, the audience was still engrossed in the film, completely unaware of the nightmare about to unfold. Once inside, he threw a tear gas grenade into the crowd. The chemical smoke quickly spread, causing panic and difficulty breathing. Exploiting the chaos, Holmes began to fire his weapons coldly and relentlessly. He sprayed bullets into the audience with his AR-15 semi-automatic rifle, then switched to his shotgun and handguns when the AR-15 jammed. The flashing lights from the screen and the tear gas only intensified the chaotic scene, turning the movie theater into a living hell. In just a few brief minutes, this brutal attack claimed the lives of 12 innocent people, from children to adults, and left 70 others severely injured. Many suffered gunshot wounds, while others were trampled in the panicked scramble to escape. Holmes made no attempt to flee. When police arrived at the scene, just minutes after the first emergency call, they found Holmes standing calmly by his car in the parking lot behind the theater. He had removed his tactical gear and showed no intention of escaping or resisting. When asked if he had any accomplices, Holmes chillingly replied, "I am the Joker." Throughout the multi-month trial, Holmes appeared emotionless, sometimes displaying a strange smile, showing no remorse whatsoever. He attempted to plead insanity, but the jury rejected this argument after considering the evidence and expert testimonies. On the 7th of August, 2015, James Holmes received a chilling sentence: 12 consecutive life sentences, one for each deceased victim, plus 318 years in prison without parole for intentional murder and assault charges. A colossal figure, a proclamation of justice not only to punish but to absolutely ensure that James Holmes would never again see the light of day as a free man. He is currently serving his sentence in a Colorado prison. 2. Dudley Wayne Kyzer. Moving on to the next entry, we have Dudley Wayne Kyzer, the violent murderer, a name synonymous with brutality and horrific sentences in Alabama. Born in 1947 in Alabama, Dudley Wayne Kyzer was a man with a history of violence and legal conflicts. He was known as an aggressive individual, always ready to use force to resolve personal disputes. His life was a series of violent acts, leading him to face multiple prison sentences. In February 1976, Kyzer committed a gruesome crime, murdering 2 people, his former mother-in-law, Elizabeth Kyzer, and a 22-year-old college student named Ricky Wilson, his daughter's boyfriend, whom he disapproved of. The crime occurred in Jefferson County, Alabama, where Kyzer shot and killed both victims. He was arrested and sentenced to life imprisonment for both murder charges. However, in a decision that many later considered a deadly mistake by the justice system, Kyzer was released on bail while awaiting appeal, and during that time he continued to sow terror. On the 10th of February, 1981, Dudley Wayne Kyzer murdered his own wife, Pamela Kyzer. The murder took place at their home in Shelby County, Alabama. Kyzer brutally killed Pamela, shooting her in the head and then stabbing her body multiple times. The motive was believed to be family conflict and pathological jealousy. He did not flee after committing the crime, but waited for law enforcement to arrive. After murdering his wife, Kyzer was quickly apprehended at the scene. At the trial for Pamela's murder, the judge handed down an unprecedented sentence. In 1981, Dudley Wayne Kyzer was sentenced to 10,000 years in prison for his wife's murder, in addition to life sentences for his previous murders in 1976. 3. Michael J. Devlin. The third entry on our list is Michael J. Devlin, the Pizza Man child predator, a name that initially seemed ordinary yet concealed a depraved child predator. Born in 1965, Devlin lived in Kirkwood, Missouri, working as a pizza maker. His unassuming appearance allowed him to easily hide his darkest deeds for many years. Devlin's primary motive was to satisfy his twisted desires by kidnapping and sexually abusing young boys. He meticulously planned to find, lure, and hold his young victims captive, controlling their lives absolutely. Devlin's story is intertwined with two shocking kidnappings in America. Shawn Hornbeck. On the 6th of October, 2002, when he was just 11 years old, Shawn Hornbeck mysteriously disappeared while riding his bike near his home in Richwoods, Missouri. The entire U.S. followed the search for Shawn for years without success. No one knew that the boy had been kidnapped by Devlin and held captive in his apartment in Kirkwood, about 70 miles from Shawn's home. Devlin used severe threats, from harming Shawn's family to killing him, to completely control his victim. Shawn was abused and lived in fear, not daring to reveal anything. What's terrifying is that the boy lived with Devlin like a family member, even attending school and appearing in public without anyone recognizing him, a testament to Devlin's astonishing manipulative abilities. Ben Ownby. On the 8th of January, 2007, another boy, 13-year-old Ben Ownby, was also kidnapped by Devlin after getting off his school bus in Beaufort, Missouri. Ben's disappearance garnered significant attention from both police and the public. Devlin typically approached victims cunningly. With Shawn, he stopped his car and pretended to ask for directions, then used force to get Shawn into the car. With Ben, he approached the boy while he was walking, lured him with sweet words, and forced him into the vehicle. He used his black van to transport and hold his victims captive. The breakthrough in the case came from a witness statement who saw a black pickup truck with a specific decal near the scene of Ben Ownby's kidnapping. This lead brought police to Michael Devlin's home. On the 12th of January, 2007, when police executed a search warrant at Devlin's apartment in Kirkwood, Missouri, they found not only Ben Ownby but also discovered Shawn Hornbeck there at the same time. That moment ended nearly 5 horrific years for Shawn and rescued Ben from a similar fate. In court, Michael Devlin often remained silent and showed little emotion, maintaining an unreadable expression. He showed no remorse or regret for his heinous crimes. In 2008, Michael Devlin was sentenced to 74 consecutive life sentences, equivalent to a minimum of 2,020 years in prison without parole. 4. Allan Wayne McLaurin. Next, let's learn about Allan Wayne McLaurin, an individual who, along with his accomplice Darren Benelford Anderson, unleashed extreme terror in Oklahoma City, USA. Born in 1960, McLaurin was an individual with a criminal record and was known to be violent. He often operated with his accomplice Darren Benelford Anderson, and together they carried out a series of extremely brutal crimes. The primary motive for McLaurin and Anderson was a combination of robbery for money, satisfying depraved desires through rape, and a sadistic enjoyment of instilling fear and tormenting victims. They sought not only material possessions but also wished to torture and humiliate their victims in a barbaric manner. In 1993, in Oklahoma City, McLaurin and Anderson carried out a horrific crime spree that lasted for several weeks. They did not target specific individuals, but preyed on those they could rob, sexually assault, and hold captive. Their crimes included breaking into homes, holding victims at gunpoint and knife point. The peak of their brutality was when they forced and raped a woman right in front of her young child, an inhumane act that shocked public opinion. They also tortured victims, forcing them to endure despicable acts. Some victims were kidnapped and held for a short period, subjected to both physical and psychological torture. Their methods of committing crimes were extremely cruel, often using guns to threaten, knives to intimidate, and brute force to control victims. This crime spree left deep physical and psychological scars on many victims. After an intensive manhunt, McLaurin and Anderson were apprehended. In court, McLaurin's brutal behavior was clearly exposed. In 1994, Allan Wayne McLaurin was sentenced to 21,250 years in prison. This sentence was accumulated from countless individual charges. Each instance of rape, each robbery, each assault, and kidnapping was counted as a separate offense. And each offense carried a very high sentence to be served consecutively. 5. Charles Scott Robinson. Finally, and also the individual holding the record for the longest sentence in U.S. judicial history, we turn to Charles Scott Robinson, the child molester with the longest sentence in history. Born in 1968 in Oklahoma, Charles Scott Robinson was once a family man with an ordinary appearance, living in a small community. This very ordinariness helped him conceal the most depraved and heinous acts society has ever witnessed. Robinson had no public criminal record prior to this case, making his crimes even more shocking. Robinson's sole and depraved motive was to satisfy his twisted sexual desires by sexually abusing children. He exploited the trust, innocence, and vulnerability of young children to commit vile acts over an extended period, treating them as mere playthings for his own gratification. In 1994, Charles Scott Robinson's horrific crimes came to light. He was accused and subsequently convicted of sexually abusing 6 children, including his own stepdaughter and her friends. The abuse occurred over a significant period, not just as isolated incidents. Robinson abused young victims for months, even years. He targeted vulnerable, susceptible children, often those geographically close to him or known to him. Robinson used intimidation, deception, or leveraged his adult authority to compel victims to comply with his will. He committed numerous heinous acts of abuse, causing irreversible psychological and physical trauma to the young victims. Robinson's abuses were discovered when one of the victims was brave enough to speak out. After receiving the report, law enforcement quickly investigated and arrested Charles Scott Robinson. In court, Robinson reportedly showed no clear remorse and attempted to appeal his sentence but was unsuccessful. In 1994, the Oklahoma State Court sentenced Charles Scott Robinson to a historic term, a figure that astonished the world: 30,000 years in prison. This is the longest prison sentence ever handed down to an individual in the U.S. and possibly worldwide. This sentence was calculated by imposing 5,000 years in prison for each of the 6 victims he abused. Most importantly, all these sentences were to be served consecutively, meaning a total of up to 30,000 years. This penalty was not only a severe punishment, but also a strong affirmation from the justice system. Those who harm children will pay the highest price and will never have a chance to return to society. Charles Scott Robinson is currently serving his sentence in a federal prison, confined by the longest sentence in U.S. history, a perpetual sentence without hope. This has been a journey exploring the 5 longest prison sentences in U.S. history. These figures are not just penalties, but also a stark warning about the consequences of crime. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.